Hello, Western Patriots. Lord Stompy here in Adelaide, South Australia. Welcome to the show. Okay, guys, sit back, grab yourselves a beer, grab some popcorn. I'm back on YouTube, and I don't even know why. I hate YouTube. YouTube is the complete antithesis of everything I believe in, which is truth, free speech, and celebration of nationalism in a positive, healthy sense. YouTube, you do not tolerate any of these things upon your platform. You are, of course, the pinnacle of a sold out globalist platform that basically caters to the dumbing down of the masses at best. For whatever reason you are there, YouTube, it is not for people like myself to spread truth and light and free speech throughout the community. So, bearing that in mind, for some reason I am back on YouTube, and I have lost my 1,000 plus subscribers. So anybody finding me now on YouTube, here I am, probably for a limited time only. Now, what is very interesting is the thing that took me down off YouTube was I criticised feminism too much. It was actually my MGTOW videos on YouTube. I basically got 5 strikes in one day for 5 different videos. And this was really... It wasn't shocking to me. It was a big surprise because there was other videos that I basically had criticized Zionism. And anybody in the game that I'm in, if you criticize Zionism and you have a good aim and your critique is really on the mark, that you're on very dangerous ground. You're not allowed to criticize Jews. They had a Holocaust 70 years ago, and they're the most oppressed people in the world's history. They've been kicked out of 109 countries, and people just don't understand how hard it is to be Jewish and to have everybody hating you so much. So that's why when people like myself, even if our criticism has a lot of truth and it's very valid and it's well aimed, that's why we have to be shut down. Because no matter what, if you are criticizing Jews, the most oppressed and persecuted people on the planet, that's hate speech. And on top of that, they're God's chosen people. So they're above criticism. They're in a certain way because of their spiritual calling, because God has called them. God has called their race out above the rest of the normal human races. So this means they're more perfect than the rest of us, and therefore above criticism. But what is funny is I thought my videos that critique Zionism would be the ones that would take me down off YouTube. But it wasn't. It was whiny ballbag Western feminists. Middle class women are now more overly sensitive and precious than Jews. That's quite a feat. Cultural Marxism here in the West, your insidious influence has totally undermined us yet again. We're seeing brave new heights of cultural Marxism from our women. All right, let's get rolling with the show. So, around my hometown, there's a lot of posters going up around my hometown for the cultural Marxists to rally and put on big protests. And these things are rolling out non-stop. I can't believe how many protests there are. There's 4 protests coming up in the coming weeks. And let's have a look through these posters. First, there's the decriminalize abortion rally that our left-wing friends are putting on. Then there's another climate change rally. These left-wing people are putting on one of these rallies about every 2 weeks. That's very, very hard-working stuff there, guys. This is the hardest that the left-wing people ever seem to work at. Most left-wing people I know are in the middle class. They've generally got government jobs, which are pretty easy. Yet they've got all this fervent energy to get out there and protest in the streets. These guys are amazing. Okay, the next protest, no right to discriminate. End all religious exemptions against discrimination. Oh, yeah, I can really see our left-wing friends are going to be out the front of mosques protesting for women's rights and gay rights, out the front of all the mosques that are now springing up in my home state. And finally, we have an unusual outsider protest. We have the Kurdistan no-fly zone for Rojava. So this is the foreigners, the refugees and immigrants that we're inviting in now. They're protesting for their own ethno-state within our country. This is what our immigrants are now agitating for. This is amazing. You know, the whole idea of globo homo is to build this global utopia where every race and culture just freely mixes together, you know, just open all the borders up, and everybody's just going to get along fine. And you know, the more borders you open up, the more everybody just loves each other and just realizes each other's common humanity. And because of that, that means that everyone puts aside the fights and the quarrels that they're now in, and they just will basically embrace this utopian pacifist ideology just by waving the magic wand of open borders, rainbow cultural Marxism across the world. That's all it takes. And that's essentially what our middle class ideologues are fighting for. That's what they believe they're fighting for with all this. So let's just quickly run down this list and unpack everything that our left-wing revolutionaries are out here on the streets to achieve. All right, guys. So decriminalize abortion. Let's see here. This is going to be a big rally. The Greens Party and the left-wing Labor Party here in Australia are really pushing for some major changes to our abortion legislation. And let me try to put this in a nutshell. Abortion is already so decriminalized. Abortion is already so legal here in Australia. I literally know, throughout my entire life, I've literally known at least 6 women have confessed to me that they use the abortion services in our country as their birth control. And they do this free. I don't think it costs them any money. And if it costs them any money, it's just the most nominal amount of money to kill their baby. And so these are essential. This is statistically across the West. It has been shown that the vast majority of people using abortion services, they're not doing it for medical reasons. They're not doing it because of rape or incest, which are very valid reasons. Let me add right there. I do support abortion in those very critical circumstances where it's critical to the health of the woman or the baby. Yes, indeed, I do totally support that. But what's happening here in the West is more and more women just forget to use contraception or they can't be bothered using it. I literally know one degenerated woman, a a specimen that I do not even want to contemplate. She's literally had 11 abortions in her life, and she literally told me she uses the abortion clinic as her birth control service. So the Australian taxpayer is picking up an enormous tab because this woman doesn't want to use normal birth control. She wants to use the birth control of murdering her babies. Now, I have a Christian friend who has been really getting around town. He's been going to rallies to protect the unborn because the Greens and the Labor politicians want to push through a bill that essentially legalizes full-term abortion. And this is getting to the point where I'm not surprised about much that the left wing do anymore, but this is really shocking. Like, even for me. There's some other measures in the bill. I'm not going to go into it, but yes, one of the measures they want is full-term abortion. So my Christian friend is going around to pro-life rallies, and he's started a petition, a pro-life petition, to oppose these insane laws that our insane left-wing friends are trying to put through. Now, here's a major turn-up for the books. I said, how is the petition going, to my Christian friend? And he said, what is really surprising to me is that a very high percentage of people signing this petition are Islamic. Right? So this is actually even very surprising to me. Let's just briefly unpack this, okay? My Christian friend and myself, we're not the biggest fans of Islam. And having said that, that does not mean I hate Islamic people. I just have ideological opposition on certain very key issues to Islam. I mean, it is a pretty weird religion, isn't it? They basically, me drinking a beer is a sin in the Islamic religion, but I'm allowed to have sex with a 9-year-old as long as we get married by an imam. Okay, so, and that's one of the key ideological differences. But, you know, having said all that, what's really interesting here is on a very, very key issue. It's very important to patriots, conservatives, and Christian folk here in the West. We're getting key support from the Islamic community. And this is actually a very interesting development. My Christian friend was actually very grateful that a lot of Islamic people were coming forward and signing this petition. So we've actually got a few key factors that Australian patriots, Western patriots and traditionalists, we have some key points that we agree upon with our Islamic community in our own countries. I'm really interested to see how this will play out over time. So, having said that, let's go on to the next posters that are around town. Climate change. Oh, you got to love the climate change crew. This is the definition of an AstroTurf protest, if I've ever seen one. In fact, I think the whole climate change movement, what's it called? The Extinction Rebellion. I think this goes down in the Guinness Book of Records as the world's greatest, largest AstroTurf movement. So, what is an AstroTurf movement? Well, You've got grassroots movements where the local community are actually fighting for their own rights. And so that's a movement that's started by people from the ground up. So the local people in the community, they might not like the fact that a bunch of trees are going to get cut down by the local council, so they'll get together without any external support. They'll get together and protest the trees being cut down, and essentially an astroturf movement is when the governments or the elites or the corporations themselves they create a movement from the top, and they infiltrate that movement into the local community, and that's what is happening with climate change. Now let's very quickly unpack the climate change. Basically, the whole climate change philosophy is the climate's changing because of carbon dioxide. This is a very, very simplistic argument. Now, the climate change supposed experts, they claim that there's large numbers of scientists on their side, etc. I know some leading scientists that aren't on their side. It seems they are fudging. The elites are fudging the numbers on that. That's all a different discussion. But the ultimate thing that the ultimate outcome of if the Extinction Rebellion movement has its way is they're going to further destroy the already vastly diminishing Western industry capacity. So for decades now in the West, our Western industry has been destroyed. Here in my hometown, we used to have 3 car manufacturing plants up until the early 1980s. We used to make our own white goods. Australia was an incredibly self-sufficient country. We're full of natural resources, and we used to be very, very hard-working, reliable, ingenious people with a lot of know-how and a lot of skill. And all that's been destroyed. Our working classes have already been destroyed. Our manufacturing base has been destroyed. So we're no longer self-sufficient. We're relying on places like China and India especially to provide us with the goods that we need. And if the climate change people have their way, they'll destroy what is left of our industry, because supposedly industry creates carbon dioxide, and this is this evil force that's destroying our environment and our climate. The interesting thing is overall Australia creates 3% of the world's carbon dioxide, and and this is on already very reduced industry, and places like China and India create about 60 or 70%. So the climate change protesters don't realise that China and India are never going to obey any reductions in their use of fossil fuels. I mean, this is how stupid the climate change Extinction Rebellion protesters are. Essentially, what these people would have to do would be to give up their iPhones, their computers, their cars at the very start. They'd have to, and further down the track, they'd have to give up having our agriculture driven around by trucks. They'd have to give up the trains, the public transport system. So we'd all be reduced to riding bicycles to please this lot. And even if we did all this stuff here in Australia, it would only tackle 3% of the carbon dioxide emissions in the world. So already our working classes and our industry have been destroyed. Our self-sufficiency as a nation has been destroyed. And it's because of the fact that our industry has been destroyed, this has empowered India and China, who have far less regulation on their industry and far less rights for their workers. Um, it's they essentially it's been a absolute win for the globalists, for the bankers, the billionaires who run our industry, because they've moved all their industry offshore to countries where people work for $5 an hour and no workers' rights. That suits the globalists and the corporatists fine. So everything these climate change people are doing and fighting for is just playing further and further into the globalist hands. And on top of that, in the end of the day, they want to institute a carbon tax. Well done, climate change protesters. You are now introducing a communistic tax that is further going to hit the poor and the middle classes. We've got almost no middle classes left here in Australia, and the few middle classes that are left are agitating to further destroy what's left of the middle classes. So once again, cultural Marxism, bravo, absolute bravo on turning our people into a bunch of completely hysterical lemmings with the IQ of a pot of boiled turnips. I remember a time in the West when the middle classes used to be somewhat sane. Not entirely, but they were somewhat sane, and they were seen as the people upholding Western values. So the middle class, the working classes were seen as the people that build society, and the middle classes were seen as the people that upheld the intellectual and the spiritual values of the West. Wow, of those days long past. You know, you're looking 40 or 50 years ago, and that role that the middle classes played of upholding values was already on the way out in the early 80s. It's gone now. Our middle classes now, in a large degree, are basically a traitor class who have been co-opted into destroying what remains of their Western civilization. Okay, so another protest. Let's have a look at this. No right to discriminate. So there's this protest is a protest to end religious exemptions for discrimination. So does this mean that we're going to see our middle class revolutionary friends are now going to be out the front of mosques here in Australia demanding equal rights for gays within the Islamic community and equal rights for women in the Islamic community? Does this mean that we're going to see our left-wing friends out the front of synagogues demanding the same things? No, I would conjecture from this protest, because I have an amazing mind where I can actually intuitively read the future and read other people's minds. I would say that the main reason these left-wing do-gooders are enacting this march is to harass Christians. So far, I've never seen any left-wing revolutionaries or protesters ever criticize Islam. No matter how far Islamic people go here in the West, whether they rape our children, whether they blow up things, whether they have four wives, a few of which are underage, and their own cousins. all of these things which are against the laws of bigamy and child marriage here in the West. I am yet to see any left-wing ideologues target the growing Islamic community with their aggressive ire and their chest beating morality.
Allahu Akbar.
For some reason, all of this idealism and this moral potboiler tub thumping gets saved for their own people. So basically what this means is these people want to force Christian people here in the West to, just... how do I say this? The left-wing people are assuming that they can extend the long and greasy arm of their rainbow equality into every area of every European's person's life, including their private religious practices. Now, this is why there has always been traditionally a very big divide made between the secular state and the private religious practices of people in the West. And the idea being that if people are voluntarily privately practicing a religion, and when you're practicing a religion, that's the key point here. If you're practicing a religion, that's something you've voluntarily signed up for. It's like being part of a club. If you're part of a church where you take the Bible and the gospel seriously, and it says you are not allowed to ordain homosexuals or women in your church because it says in your holy book, the Bible, not to ordain homosexuals and women because that's a sin before God. If it says that, then everybody who is voluntarily attending your church is agreeing to those rules. And if the person doesn't like those rules, they're free to leave your church. They're free to leave that group and to find a church that suits them. This is what being a free agent with free choice means here in the West. It's been like this for over 100 years now. Okay, and this is one of the great fundamental foundations that the West was built on. It was built on the separation of the secular state and the private church, the private religious component, which people voluntarily choose from their hearts to uphold. But now, what these whiny ballbag do-gooders are doing, they are advocating that the nanny state extends its laws and extends its legal reach into people's private lives. This is absolute outrage. These people are so ignorant. They are so stupid. They are so corrosive to everything that the West was founded upon. And the fact that they're choosing to kick their own culture and one of their own traditional religions when it's already down, when it's already like dying in the gutter. This shows you what idiots and craven cowards these people are. Surely you people have better things to do with your time and your energy. Surely. I cannot express how disgusted and frustrated I am with these people. Furthermore, actually, this is a very interesting side point. is the Indigenous Australians, the vast majority of Indigenous tribes here in Australia, but essentially sodomy was heavily outlawed, and it was to put it in a very simple fashion, most Indigenous Australians in their traditional culture, sodomy was against their spiritual laws. So is this what you do-gooder people are going to do as well? Are you going to harass our Indigenous brothers and sisters, the original people of the Australian culture, into basically turning their backs on their tribal laws, which are thousands and thousands of years old? And the Indigenous Australians and the Christians actually have some very good reasons that these basically these spiritual laws are the way they are. And that I'm not going to go into why this is in this video. I'm just going to say that if you think that it's a good idea demanding that the nanny state authority figure, the globalist nanny state, then intrudes into everybody else's private lives on your behalf because you think you've got the moral right to advocate for an authoritarian body to control everyone else, don't be surprised when 5 to 10 years down the track, that moral that authoritarian state that you demand controls everybody else, you suddenly find it controlling your life. If you wish this kind of thing upon everybody else, man, and you empower the authoritarian nanny state to have completely unreasonable legal controls into other people's lives and their religions, don't be surprised when that authoritarian nanny state turns on you. Okay, the final protest we have here, Kurdistan. These posters are going up all over town. There's dozens of them everywhere. Kurdistan, no-fly zone for Rojava. There was a few other ones. So what we are seeing here now, and this is entirely predictable, is that the Kurds, the Kurds are a minority people from the Middle East, and it's all very complex. But the various tribes of the Middle East have been fighting each other for millennium now. It's never stopped in the Middle East, and the whole do-gooder rainbow multiculti agenda is that if only we open up everybody's all the world's borders and just have everybody mix freely together, that all these old battles will no longer matter. Everyone will just magically forget the past and will just indulge in this this long luxurious now of atheistic consumerism, because atheistic consumerism will fix everything. And if we just use some very shallow sort of logic and reason, we'll use a little bit of shallow logic and reason and explain to everybody that all these things of the past no longer matter. Your history and your culture no longer really matters that much. All it matters, all your culture and history matter is just some sort of vague, superficial identity kind of thing, so that you can walk around and say, you know, I'm a Muslim, you know, and the fact that you've got that many tribes on this planet have a very long past history of either helping each other or fighting each other, or a combination of both, that suddenly doesn't matter anymore. Well, this magical globo homo fairy is it's not quite working out how the ideologues would have you believe. So what's happening now is you're seeing the Kurds are aggressively agitating for their own ethno-state. There's a lot of stuff going down in the Middle East at the moment. The Kurds are a minority group of people, and they want their own ethno-state. They're not getting it. What's really interesting is that Trump pulling the troops out of Syria has actually really angered the Kurds. This is very interesting. The left-wing ideologues who hate Trump, they're not giving him any credit for pulling his troops out of Syria, which is something they wanted. If Hillary Clinton had have got into power and had have done this, the left-wing would have been trumpeting this from rooftops. But because it's Trump doing this, they're all ignoring it. And on top of that, there's all this blowback from minority groups who they actually were benefiting from American troops being in the Middle East. And so this is what happens. We're ending up with this total Babylonian mix-up where all the cultures of the world are now just being shaken around like different ingredients in a paper bag. And here in our Western countries, they're now bringing their fights into our countries. This was totally foreseeable. If you're a more common sense, nationalistic, patriotic kind of person, you realize that the rest of the world, they're not going to just drop thousands of years of history and just embrace rainbow utopia. It's just, that's not human nature. It's not logical. It's not reasonable. The fact that the liberals of the world have expected everyone in the world to do this, and then chosen Western countries as the place to carry out this global experiment. It's just absolutely heartbreaking to watch this global experiment, which is mainly being carried out here in the West, unfold. I predicted all this would happen years ago. Another major confrontation, which actually came to violence that we had recently, was Chinese people here in Australia versus Hong Kong people. They were literally coming to blows in our streets. This was entirely predictable and expected. So now that we've completely undermined Western civilization, and we're undermining it further, and the liberals are showing no signs of being able to accurately read the situations they've created. This is the scariest part. Liberals, as these events are unfolding in front of our eyes, liberals are unable to decode the fallout of the policies that they've enacted. They're unable to comprehend what they've done. And if they're not even able to comprehend what they've done already to our Western nations, they're unable to take any responsibility. So they continue to run around like rebellious children in our streets, somehow demanding that they're being oppressed, and that all these bad things are happening, and that this mythological patriarchy, the straw man that they call the patriarchy or whatever, is actually to blame for all these bad things. It's not their own policies and their own ideology that's creating a lot of this mess. So finally, I'll leave you with this. Essentially, all these posters around town are revealing the leftist ideology here in Australia. So they're fighting for the right to kill their own babies. Well done, middle-class women. You're fighting for the right to kill your own babies up to full term. They're also fighting to destroy our industry and our working classes even further, to take away such items as our cars and our transport. And they want to institute communism in the form of carbon taxes on the masses, which will further degrade our already degraded Western economies and our Western middle classes and working classes. And on top of that, they want to exert control in every aspect of European traditional life and private religious practices, and to essentially further and further outlaw any expression of traditional European identity or religion. And finally, they want to import millions of hostile foreigners into our country, many of whom have an incredibly hostile view towards us and towards each other. And this is now coming out on the streets. So now that we're implementing all those policies on behalf of our leftist do-gooders, the downhill slalom which Western civilization has been on for the last few decades can only be projected to increase in speed to an absolute avalanche of shit into the most dystopian, communistic hell, combined with a global Babylon factor that within the next 5 to 10 years will utterly destroy and transform our Western civilizations beyond anything that we can even comprehend. Good luck, my fellow citizens. Good luck, my fellow Western patriots. Good luck, my fellow Western Christians. We need all the strength we can get. Pray hard. Come together. Do the right thing by your brothers and sisters. Deus Volt.